So what effectively we do when I'm trying to talk about what stream things are going to go in, there's a couple of different checks that I tend to go through. First one's behavior, second one's function, location, and then type. So I'll go through each one in a little bit more detail, but the long story short is you're kind of like narrowing down where things should effectively live within your system. And this analysis kind of helps you effectively adjudicate whether or not something should be in actions, whether or not it should be a focus, a resource. There's been a few different questions around what should go where. And really, it's down to you and how you're using the system. So it's less about where I think it should go and more about using this analysis to decipher where it should go for yourself. So we're going to go through a bunch of different examples for that, but by teaching you the method, that should effectively enable you to scale the system yourself and also integrate other people's systems or other templates or your own kits into this focus streams system. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So in terms of behavior check, is it actionable? Does it need doing? Does it require storing? Does it require, is it a resource? Is it something that I'm going to create? Is it something I need to capture? Or is it trackable? So there's a couple of different behaviors and they're all linked to different super tags, different functions, but they're also pretty much distinguishing where things are going in your system as well. So I'm going to have on the left-hand side, I'm going to open up the schema to go along with this. So I'm in this one. Okay, so I effectively installed the Focus Pro and also a bunch of the templates, the SuperDAG templates from the Tana template store. We're going to basically integrate everything together and we'll go through these different checks to make sure that we do that. Behavior, function requires like effectively, function will the function check is, does this need that? Does this need to be saved? Does this need to have a status? Does this need to have a special view? Depending on how you want to set that up. Project, for example, is a status-based super tag. It's also got a view attached to it. So there's various different functions, but it's separate from hobby. So these are the reasons why these might be split. Location check is down to where it's going to live. So within the Vault system or the created day page or things like that, this relates to the function, but certain streams have those behaviors already pre-assigned, which does also help you decide where things might go. Okay. This will come a little bit clearer as we go into the demo. And then the type check is along the lines of putting it into which stream type category it's going to go into. So focus, anything in focus is going to be your overarching top level container. Execute is actionable items that have a status or a trackable feature to them. Events are timed and scheduled, and gather is all your reusable resources. And reflect is logs and journals. So taking that into mind, I'm going to now go through anything in here. As I go through this, if you have any super tags that you want to know where to place it, pop them into the chat because I will basically build a super tag if it's not included in this, and we'll build extra things live into it as we go. So we can justify where things might go and evaluate it. So keep that in the background for as I'm going through this, and feel free to add in random tags and we'll talk about them. So I'll start off basically with what's simple with focus. Project is the obvious one. That's coming from the project super tag template that is in Tana. It's not mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and have a little look and see what's attached to it. And I can see that it's got its own status, it's got a duration, and it's got a definition of done. Now, I might not want to mess with anything, but I can see there's no commands in here. There's just related content blocks. So there's probably nothing that's going to affect this in terms of actual commands. You've seen this one before in the newsletter.
That's one of the tags she wants.
Okay. Yeah. We'll go. Okay. I'll leave that one on the side. I'll pop it in here for a second. Newsletter. Okay. So in here, I can see the status. I don't necessarily want to have this status, so we're just going to delete it because I've got my own system that we know we can plug that into later. Duration and done definition again doesn't necessarily need to be there. Now, I have a choice with this project tag. It's clearly just a project. I can either add it to my current one and merge them all together, or I can have a completely new project tag that might want to go into something like pursuits. So I could call this, for now, let's call it personal project, and that I'm going to place into a pursuit, just for the time being, just so there's some type of distinction between the two of them. And I can see now that I've got my time log and the vault assigned here. So I actually don't need duration and I don't need definition of done. So I can get rid of those because they're not relevant to this system. And I can't get rid of these because they are relevant to this system. They're part of the stream and pursuits. So it's up to you if you keep whatever properties you want from here. But by assigning things into the streams, you'll acquire the necessary fields that are required specifically for that stream. And then if you want to or need to add other things in here afterwards, that's completely your choice. But it means that anything that is associated to the stream will be kind of solid. So you can either delete the original content, or you can keep it, or you can adapt it. In this case, I've chosen to delete it, but there'll be other cases where we might choose to keep it. So for now, I'm going to close that down, and we've got personal project assigned into pursuits. I don't see anything specifically in here. This is something else. It's actually a function in some way, shape, or form. This is something that it says extend your task meeting super tags to add the project field. So in the template, it's basically saying if you add this extension, it will acquire a linking field for the projects. We don't really necessarily need that, but I'm just going to call this function, which means that this search will disregard it from view. I already know that that's a function because I looked through the template, but you can basically go through and have a little look yourselves if you did choose to change things. So that excludes it from the search. So what else have we got here now? There's another habits extension. I also know that that is a function as well. So I'm just going to also do the same treatment, call it function, and then that can disappear from here. I don't see anything else that can come into focus, so we'll move across and we'll go into execute. So here there's a bunch of stuff. There's like habit logs, there's habits themselves, brainstorms, questions, tasks, etc. Okay, so where do we go from here? Task and to discuss. They're clear, obvious executions. So we're going to add them into these different areas. But before we do that, we're going to talk about like their actual hierarchy and what we want these things to do. Currently, they are set with to-dos, like checklist items. But the status system that we currently have, if we're going to add it into that, has a more in-depth structure system for the statuses with the smart checkboxes. So this is actually probably not a task then if it's a checklist, because in our system, anything with a checklist is the lowest level to-do item. But I imagine if we go into configure here, we're probably going to find some type of tracking instance where it's like a due date or a status or something like that. Okay, so we're going to acquire both of these, our own status system, when we attach it to a status. So the question is, do we really want this to act the way that we want it to, or do we want to merge it, or do we want to combine it? So in this instance, I'm going to treat it as if this is probably a tag that's been there for a long time, and I might want to combine these two together. So in this instance, I'm just going to delete the fields out of the template. We're going to delete all of this stuff out, turn this off, and now we've got just a straight basic task. And I'm going to merge this together. And that way we take on all the properties that we've got from the current actions that are in our system, which is the green task, but we're not going to acquire anything from here because we've just kind of cleaned it all out. We've deleted everything from it. So this is like my best practice for the way that I merge tasks and, merge tags. And this is the way that I would go about combining this if you had lots and lots of content from a long time. For example, let's say, I mean, I've been using Tana for a solid year, and throughout that time, I've had multiple different task tags. And this is the way that I go about doing it, is that I clear out everything that's not needed from the previous tag, and then make sure I bring things over. I'm a bit hammer keyboard, and I just give it a funny name, and then I do Command K, merge, and make sure you merge it into the correct one. And then all I do is do another little quick check to make sure that nothing is kind of lingering. So that way, I've now taken everything that was task and I've just merged it together. So I've combined the systems now within that framework. The next things to go into is to discuss. I can understand if you want that to operate differently, because if we actually go into here, you will see we've got like actual references to people and an event or a meeting or something like that. So in this instance, we're going to keep that, but I'm just going to turn the checkbox off because I've got my own status system for it. And I'm going to add that into actions. I'm doing this quite quick because these are kind of the obvious ones. They are the lowest level of your action level, well, your lowest trackable level. The only level below this is your checklist to do items, which are not trackable. I went through this in the previous video. I think you don't want them to be, you don't want these little these checkbox items to be surfacing with all of your other tasks. You're going to end up with a matrix of all sorts of different things. So those two are the obvious ones. Let's go on to the more interesting ones. This is where I'm going to close these guys down and we'll have a look in. I'm going to go to gather first. Well, okay. We've got day. Let's do this one, which is an easy one. So the day super tag, we're going to pull him across. I'm just going to go into config just to see what's in here, because I know that there is this related content block. Choose to keep it or don't keep it. I'm going to delete it for the purpose of this demo. And we'll just check. Obviously, there's no fields. And I'm going to merge those two together. And then we'll see the day tag on the right-hand side will update. I work out which is the right one. Show the magic. So the one on the right is going to update, and it will get all the properties, all the commands, all the bits and pieces will all pop up on here. Great. Okay, so now that's all set. So this is the way that we combine the systems, and then we're going to add the week into the time logs. Okay. So now we've set those guys up. Again, obvious ones. We'll go into gather, which is the more interesting concepts here. So there's a couple of different things going on. We've got the habits, we've got the capture systems like brainstorm, weekly reflection, daily prep, article. These are all the capture and process options that you get based with Tana when you go into the super type templates. In this instance, we can very easily just merge person and company. So I'll just leave them to, I'll just do that very quickly. And we'll just make sure there's nothing, we can merge all that, that's okay. So we'll merge those two. And person is the other one we'll do. Okay. So we're kind of whistling down this list a little bit. Weekly reflection is a capture. So how do I want the behavior to operate? Well, right now I've got research, which is connected to my note system. So I'm going to zoom out because I kind of need a bit more of a satellite view on this because I need to open up another window. And I'm going to go to the save settings so that I can see where things are going. And within this, sorry, jumping around. Okay, so within here, I can see that my materials, my records, so materials and records, they're going to a vault. So I'm going to just move him up one so that those two are together. And I've got links and research going to the today page. Okay. That means that I scroll that over. Okay. Things like daily prep, weekly reflection, and probably memo. These are all note capturing devices. You probably, up to you where you want to store them, but in this particular demo, I've got them being stored on the today page. So I want them to stay there because I want them to stay at the point where they're captured. So that means that if I record a voice note under daily prep, it's going to go onto that day page that it was created and it will stay there, and that's where it's going to live. So, but you can change this depending on where you want to place these research and links, but this is what I'm kind of going through now. So going back, daily prep, voice note, I want to capture it, I want to put it on the today page. So that's where he's going into research, and I've deciphered that because of the save functions that are associated to it, the behavior that I want it to have, and where I want it to live in the system. And also the functions I want it to have as well, to a certain degree. So next one is weekly reflection. Same scenario again. These are capture weekly insights and progress with your voice. Same as daily prep. It's just another one of those voice capture systems that are provided by. So we're going to add him into the research. Question, brainstorm. These are, sorry, brainstorm again. Also part of research. Another capture system. It's a way to gather stuff together. What this outputs, I'm not exactly sure. So it might be that I go to the config, you get ideas and questions as the output. You might find that actually the brainstorm, even though it's a voice capture, it's a material and it's part of a project. So let's switch that. Brainstorm for me kind of feels more like it should be, it's a material. Even though it's inputted through capture through the system, actually, it's actually a material. The weekly reflection is notes. The daily prep is notes. Even though it's kickstarted with your voice, it's notes. But let's just go into these and double check. This is where there are rules for tags. Yeah, like this is kind of why I'm trying to explain it's not about where the tag goes, it's about how you want it to behave and what it's actually achieving in your system and what it's supposed to be doing. So in this instance, we can see that it is giving me some details out from the processing. So it's up to you whether or not you would keep this as research. Technically, the voice note transcript that you put in there would be the research, because that would be the capture, and the daily prep would be a material or a record. This is open for debate to a certain extent, but let's change this up and keep it simple. So research is going to be all about accumulated knowledge and insights. It's only going to be the capture system. So let's put daily prep and reflection both into records. And they are things that are going to be stored because it's going to be a finalized point, even though that it might be kickstarted with your voice. So I'm going to leave them there for the moment and think that's okay, because these feel like they are reviews. So they're technically part of a record, something you probably want to save. I'm going to go with that for the time being. Idea, article, and memo. Okay, so these ones come next. Let's have a look at what memo is doing very quickly. Nothing. So memo is probably a note format of sorts. We've got custom autofill, so it's voice activated, but there's some commands for rewriting. So I would say memo is definitely part of research. It's almost kind of working like a reminder, but it's a specific thing that you've tagged and noted as a memo. So let's go with that. By the way, all of this is up for debate. Please do so if you have other thoughts or ideas. Can I see the chat on my thing? Nope, I can't see the chat apparently. I'm scared to click something now. Ah, there we go. Okay. Okay, so continuing a bit further forward, we'll keep memo in type of research. It has the same sort of properties as a note. I would probably put this more as like a voice memo maybe, but we'll leave it as the default for the time being. And I'll go into article and have a little look and see what this one's doing. So again, nothing. It's got some commands for the rewrite on the end. Okay. So it's technically operating the same way. So again, this kind of comes down to what do you want it to do and should it be operating the same way? What's the worst that would happen if you got a tag wrong? It would behave differently and you would turn around and you would go, that's behaving differently, and you switch it to something else. I've come across it a few times in my own personal system recently, and I'll go into that in a moment about when this gets a bit more complex. Like, I'll finish this off first and I'll come back to that one, but I have got a couple of examples of that. So with article, I'm going to switch it up a little bit and I'm going to actually make that a link, because for me, as a different workflow, I'm not going to write an article. I'm actually going to tag an article, and I want it to be recorded as the URL. So for now, I'm going to add it to links because that's how I want it to behave. I'll work out exactly what that tag is doing later, but that's where I want it to go because that's how I want it to behave. Idea, another one. Is it a material record or is it part of research? Well, again, it depends on how you're using idea as a tag. If you're using it as a highlighted item that you want referencing to a certain focus, then technically it might be a record that you want to keep forever. Or it might just be something that you want to store to the today page, in which case it's something you write quickly, but you want to tag it differently to a note. And that's okay to do, but what we're talking about is something that works like a note then. So it can go in research. But I don't really want it to work like a note. I want my tags to be different. I want them to have different functionalities, and I want them to have different behavior. Otherwise, it can have the same tag. If an idea is just a note, but it's just got a different tag called idea, then there's no point in having the extra tag. Just make it a note and call it and write, this is a idea. But I want idea to operate differently. So I want idea to be part of my my projects. I want it to be a resolution to a bunch of notes maybe that I've been doing. So I want this to operate more as a material, something that's a bit more concrete, something that's going to go and stored away in a vault, something that will stay there and I'm not going to lose it in the midst of the today page, and it will surface when I want it to. So in this instance, idea is going to be something that I stamp as a highlightable item. It's something curated. It's the end of a process. It's not part of research then. So that's my rationale for the way that I'm working with this one. So idea can go into a material or it can go into a record. I think for this instance, we'll keep it in record because it's not so much of a physical thing. It's just something you want to keep track of later. Question is another one again, where it depends on how you're going to use this. But in this instance, I want the questions to probably work the same as notes, but they're a bit more specific. And it's something that I want to come back to later, but it can operate the same as a note. So we're going to keep it in research. I'm going into some of these as well. You can see now that they've got the origin and the focus assigned to them because it's part of the research stream. And it's got really nothing else in there. So that's okay. Meetings, one that when you come to a new Tana system, that's probably what is going to. I just jumped straight off that, sorry. Right, so we've got gather sorted there, okay? And what we've effectively done is dragged and dropped all the elements into the right places. We've given them an evaluation of how we want to be using them. We've worked out where they should go in terms of like the save functions. And that's pretty much dictated what's happening in each stream because we've got the save functions dictating by stream. So you might decide later that actually I've got article that's a link, but I don't want it to go to the date page, but I don't want to change the YouTube thing. So it might actually live better with records, for example. You will work out very quickly after using the system for like a day or two. Okay, that goes here, that goes there. This is supposed to be, this is where I expect that to be. That's not going to where I expect it to be. That needs to move into something else. That needs to be a different category. That shouldn't actually operate the way it should do. I'm going to go into a bit more detail about I've done this in my personal system, and that might bring some more questions up in a moment. But I'll go back to the next question. What's the worst that would happen if you got the tag wrong? Um, I'll reiterate that point again, which is effectively nothing. Just it's going to behave slightly differently, and you choose to pick it into a different point or different area or a different stream. When we come to events for the meeting tags, this is something that is going to be, it's like person and like company. I didn't quite explain before, but they're system tags that Tana's created, so it's using them in different spaces. So the reason why I merged them versus just delete is so that I made sure that things still maintain their connections with other areas in the system. So in this instance, meeting is going to be another one. I'm going to drag meeting into professional, and we're just going to straight up merge those two together. And we can see that's all set up. So we'll have a quick look in here. We've got two dates, so we'll just clean one of them out. And everything else we can keep. Okay. We've got the vaults and everything all assigned. That's all good. And everything else is all provided by the original meeting tag that came with Tana. So meeting summary, actually, We've got these rewrites and reshares. So this is probably to go into gather because it's a it's processed information and it's a resource. It's not an action, it's not executable, it's a final output. So that can go into either research or materials, depending on how you want it to behave. Currently, we have materials set up as save to vault, and we have research in save to date. So in this instance, I want the meeting summary to go to the date page it was created. I'm going to add it to research as part of that system function. Habit log and habit gets a bit more interesting, so I save them for the end. Fly buzzing around my head, sorry. Right, habit, if we go into habit and I go into habit log and look at the two templates. So this is a single completion of a habit. It will reference that habit. So this is actually the output. It's the log. We could put that in one of two places. It could go into actions, but technically speaking, this item here is not the one that's being tracked with a status. It's being logged. So the habit would be technically the objective, and the habit log itself would be in the gather system because it would be a record. Does everybody follow me on that one? So this is a repeatable item. We create a log of the habit, which does what it does. But this is a stamp. It's a final output. It's not trackable from the point of completion. It doesn't have a status that it runs through. You do it or you don't do it. So because of that, I'm going to drag habit into objectives. So it's something that happens over a period of time, even though it repeats, but it happens over a period of time. And the habit log itself, I'm going to pop that into record. Okay. And that means it's going to go to the vault and it's going to be saved in the vault and it's not going to move because it's not dynamic, hasn't got a status assigned to it. It's a record. So this is how this is how I evaluate what goes where and work out how that fits in with my system. Where do I want it to live? I'll go back to that. It's because the day switched over for me because it's now the next day. So going back to how to evaluate the streams. So when we're looking at behavior check, function check, location, and type, we're going through all of those different aspects to find out exactly where this fits into our system. And not only that, but how we're going to use it. I'm going to go back to Carol because you asked me to place the newsletter into the system. So this is a good example. And it also leads in with what I was talking about earlier, where how I've been adjusting things even in my own system recently, where I could actually do, I have to log out of Tana and come back into it again, but I'll maybe more towards the end of this, I'll do like a quick 5 minutes and show you what this looks like on a bigger, grander scale, because I've built my entire thing into that. But the newsletter is technically a material. Let's explain it this way. So if we have a project, which is a focus, and inside that focus you have an objective. The objective is to create a newsletter. The material is the newsletter. So the task is write newsletter. So I would very much so think about it this way, which is the project is the overarching focus. The objective is to create a newsletter. The task is to write the newsletter. Task is to publish the newsletter. But the output material is the newsletter. Because that way, newsletter is I've intentionally capitalized it and emphasized this twice. Like, if you have a newsletter, I can now tag a newsletter that I've written and created as a newsletter, but I can also tag a link that I've collected as a newsletter from another source. It doesn't have to be something I've created, but I don't need to now have a newsletter action and another link source for something else that's been corrected. So let's say there is a video, for example. I'm a content creator at this point. I've been doing a couple of videos. I've got a tag which is video. In this instance, I'm just going to kind of show newsletter, newsletter, video, email. Fire some examples if you think of any. Social post. Okay, and we'll convert all of those to super tags. If anyone has any more, we've got an empty one to example. Okay, so newsletter for me is a material. So is video. So is an email, and so is social post. All of those items are something you create or something you reference. Not reference. They're something you create. You write an email, you write a social post, you'll write a video, you'll write a newsletter. Okay? But all of those things are also things that you would capture. Image as well. Okay? Absolutely. Okay? So image. All of these things are all materials, but they could also be actions, as in, I have to create a video. That's technically now an objective, but the video is a video. It's a material. The act of me creating the video is the objective, and the task and the action. So by doing this, I've got one tag, which is video, that I can use for collecting stuff and also for creating stuff, because it's the video. The video might have certain properties like the runtime. It might have no, I'm not going to get any suggestions, am I?
Thumbnail?
Well, image and thumbnail, technically the same thing. Script would be technically as well another material. because all of these things, it could be an input or an output that way. Does that make sense? It's a capture, and also it's a thing. So why am I trying to use a thing as an object? So this is kind of where this comes from. It's like, what can you sift down? And the reason for it is two things. It gives you a bit more distinction with that is that, and it keeps this clean. It keeps your super tags for what you have to do much smoother and much cleaner. In my system, I don't even have to discuss. I just have one action, and the rest of it is like I in my system I've got those combined. Like I've just got one lower level action, and they combine. They have checklist items within inside of them, but everything links back to an objective, and everything links back to a focus. So it's deciphering the relationship between what you're doing with something, and then working out where that item needs to go in your system. In my mind, I don't want to have. I had 6 to 7 different tags for objectives because I've got videos that you had to create. I had a social post to create. I had I had 3 or 4 different project super tags for website design and logos and branding and all sorts of marketing material, different types of tags and stuff. And it's too much cognitive overload. Concept and methodology. Yeah. Okay. So concept and methodology. Concept, elaborate, because concept's going to be something that is a overarching record, probably. Depends on how you're using it. So, okay. So methodology, let's talk about that as a framework, something that you want to establish as a framework. So methodology, and we had concepts.
In my particular instance, so I'm creating like a fake workspace from scratch for like an alternate persona for my system, and concept and methodology are being used in that. And concepts are like game theory concepts and like things like that. And then methodologies are like use this kind of colors when I'm doing things, and use this narrative structure for presentation, that kind of thing.
Okay, so methodology, if we're talking, okay, so methodology is the top level framework, and the concept is the things that are going within it. Is if I'm understanding correctly? Not quite.
I see it as like so this is for a YouTuber, and he's like talking about science and stuff. So the concepts are just like uh, abstract intellectual ideas that's actually kind of sources for content for the YouTube channel.
Okay,
And
so let's
methodology is how he's kind of presenting those things.
okay, so let's go through the check system for it. We'll start off with methodology, the behavior of it first. Is it something that's actionable? Does it need a status check to it or anything along those lines? It's something. It's or no. So it's probably going to be some type of resource that you want to maintain and reference back to later. Okay. Does it need to have some type of process involved to it, or is it just something that you write and it stays there and it's like it goes in the book and it's part of the Bible at that point. It's never going to be
Mostly
changed.
stays there. It can be updated like as new information arrives, but yeah.
Okay, so it's probably more like a record because you want to reference back to it in some way, shape, or form later. It's not going to change too much. Once it's there, it's there. It might get updated a little bit, but it's something that's going to be pretty concurrent throughout your system. So from that account, we go straight into gather record, and it goes in the same essence of like the daily prep and the weekly reflections and things like that. These things can be updated, but they want a record of them when they're said and done, and you want to be able to reference back to them later. So methodology can go straight into there. And as you don't know what I pressed the wrong button. As you kind of work through it, then you'll decide, okay, well, I don't want, I do want this going to evolve. I'm happy with that the way it's working. Or no, I actually want these methodologies to be placed on the date page, in which case they might be part of research like notes. It purely depends on how you use them in the long run. But from what I understand from this, records is probably the best place for it. So let's talk about concept, because that was quite so some of them become quite easy, but then some of them become quite granular. So concept, how are we planning to use this? Is it, again, is it actionable? Is it a capture item? Is it a process creation or something along those lines?
It's something to be used. It's like a point of inspiration. It's a subject matter.
Is it something that you keep track of? Is it a container for other things? Would
For
other
other
actions?
things, no. It's just the concept and any notes associated with that concept or explanations.
So we've got notes associated to it. We haven't got actions associated to it.
No, it holds information basically.
It holds information. So again, it might end up going into research because it's an overarching note system, but it depends on how you're recording it. So
What's
I
the
would want to,
distinction? How would you?
I was just about to, so
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
think I think I would put it into records again. And the weird thing is that you might find that records becomes heavily outweighed by compared to the rest of your system. And that's okay because certain things, I kind of had a little chuckle to myself the other day when I was doing all of this and explaining it, because like you're tagging it by actively tagging it and sticking it in here, you want to save it. So naturally it's going to be quite, this area is going to be quite big. But so it again works down to the behavior. You want the concept to go away. It might be linked to an overarching focus, for example. So a record or a material might be probably the best place for it because they're going to work the same. They're both going to go to a vault. They don't have a status associated to them. So the question is does concept have to relate to a focus or not?
I don't think so.
So if it doesn't need to relate to a focus, it can go in records because it doesn't have to have a specific link associated to it. But if it is a material that you're using as part of a project, then you would place it into materials. So I guess the question between the two is
It's it's
is it
meant to
is it a
be
reference
used
point?
for videos, but not
If
concepts
it's
will
a
be used in videos and videos will be referenced in projects. So I'll have a project that's make video X and video
so
X
yeah,
is talking about concepts X and Y, if
so
that
this
makes
definitely
sense.
goes into materials then,
Okay.
because you're saying that the concept will relate to the video relates to a focus, correct?
Yeah, if project is a focus, then yes.
Project is a focus, video relates to a project or focus, concept relates to the video, byproduct is also related to the focus. And so this will put it into the same structure system and it will add it the same way that it's done all the others here. Concept, script, image, these are all going to be treated the same way. They're all a physical thing. You might share this concept across different things, but you might have the concept super tag. You might tag something as a concept that's not your creation because you can use it this way because it's a material. It's not it's not an action to create a concept. That's what the SNP's job and the objectives jobs. That's what their jobs are. The act of creating the concept is a deliverable or an objective. So this distinction between, is it a physical thing that I'm creating? If so, it's material. Can it be? So let's do another one as a little example. I've got a project, and inside that
Right.
project, yep,
So materials are things that I create, is that right? Like I do something and a material results. Is that kind of a like a
yeah,
guideline or
it's kind of coming down to a physical output of some sort, something that's an output. So a document, brainstorm, newsletter,
in that
video,
case,
email.
concept is definitely not a material. Like I'll be using the concepts in my videos that I make. But like I'll be talking about the concept of game theory in a video, but I'm not creating the concept of game theory. Is that
Yeah, okay, so a material is doesn't have to be something that you create. It's
oh,
something that is created. It's like if I trying to think of something physical to actually relate it to. Let's say
okay.
let, let's say I'm on YouTube, and YouTube is technically a link down here, but it could also be stored as a video technically because it's got the same reference points for it. It depends on how you're again using that particular tag. So in this instance, we've got concept. You've just turned around and we've said, okay, we want it to go into materials because we want it to link to focus or origin. But this is a good one because now you're having doubts of whether or not it should behave that way. So the other option is we have it as a record because we want it to still save to a vault. We want it to be referenced across different things. We want to keep it to cross-reference it with other things later, potentially. Or is it only going to be a one-shot use on this thing? Like once you're done with a concept, is that it?
It's there's no reason to necessarily limit it. I might make multiple videos using the concept.
So either way, between materials or records, if it's going to be used across multiple things, like a person or a company, okay, not versus one specific thing, then it's probably better to be inside of record, the same as what Carol was asking, which is where would topic go? Topic would go in here because it is a reference point, container slash category. It's something you want to go across multiple different things, but you don't really want it to be specifically related to one thing or another. Okay. So if you're the type of person that likes to here's a good one. Okay, here's a good example. Moving. Okay. This is something that okay, get rid of that guy. This is something that I want to track now because I'm watching movies every single night. So I want to track a movie. We started this conversation earlier saying that we were watching Aladdin earlier and you were watching Hitch. So I want to track movies. So movies technically is not material. It's not related to a focus or an origin. It might be related to your movie night as a focus, but seems a bit okay. But anyway, like however you choose to work it. But movie in itself technically is a record. IMDb is a whole website technically of records. It's a library of information. So library information acts the same as a record. It's something you want to cross-reference across multiple things. Think about a dictionary, I guess. That would be a record. This will be part of your record system. Anything you want to log, anything you want to cross-reference, anything that is not really going to be altered or adjusted, but maybe just updated. Okay. Materials is something that you would probably have lots and lots of them over time. You'll use them once, use them twice, doesn't particularly matter, but they are specifically related to a focus or origin, and they're usually a physical thing. So something you can see as a final output. So like a newsletter, for example, a video, an email, social post, image, script, drawings. If you're the person that makes model train sets, like this would all be materials that would link to a specific focus. That's what they've got in mind. Records, links, and research don't link to a specific thing. Other things link to records. Other things might reference links. Other things might be referenced in notes, for example. Okay? Notes and research. So the research section down here, quote, insight, concept. That's a good differentiation between, again, how you're choosing to use it. This could be, we said before that concept's not something that you're specifically writing. It will be a collection of stuff inside it. You said notes would be inside it. Yeah. No.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah.
typically I'm sorry, I'm unmuting.
All
Typically
good.
I'll be like grabbing from like these are standard concepts, you know, from textbooks and everything. But there are also some that appear as I'm creating videos, and I notice like, oh, here's a concept also. So typically referencing things that are just standard and out there, but I can be creating my own as well.
So the way that I've been distinguishing this is like research is kind of categorized things that I've created. There'll be lots of them. They'll be on the fly. Concept for me felt maybe from the way you were describing your use case of it, it's a collection of these things. So like your clusters almost from GigaBrain, but like a collection of different nodes. So I would probably place that in here because they've got other things referencing to it. So you want to keep that item safe, and record is keeping it in the vault. All good. Research is putting on the today page. Not to say that the today page is any more or less safe than storing things. It's just a case of whether or not you want it in your line of sight or not. Concepts you want them to surface probably only in the spaces where you want them to surface, not on the today page. So this feels probably the right fit in this case. If you were writing concepts, quick ones every single day, and you were doing quick notes about them and things like that, it sounds like you're using them more of a container, so I'd probably put them there. Carol's saying, now you've made me think where I'd put a stitch, an embroidery stitch with a method working on it. So again, the stitch, the embroidery stitch,
Material.
they used in design, which is product. So I'm not sure I fully understand the hierarchy you're trying to ask.
Okay. On my needlework site, I write pages on how to do certain embroidery stitches.
Okay.
Those embroidery stitches are used in the designs I create, which
Okay.
I then sell as a downloadable pattern. So
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the embroidery stitch itself is is it a project or would that be an objective?
No, I think I wouldn't say it was a project.
Then it's probably it's sounding more like a resource. So probably a material.
Yeah.
It's something you create. It's something that is referenced to other things. It's probably linked to a focus because you might have your embroidery website or store
Yeah.
that you have as the top level focus. The embroidery stitch itself then is technically is technically a material, and the objective is to create the embroidery stitch.
Okay.
So within the objective, so if we're going to we would go to a project. Let's embroidery website. Okay. I'll race through just a little bit, but we'll go to objectives. We'll make this guy embroidery stitch. New. We'll make him a deliverable. And in here, we'll do create stitch. And then sign, and then upload stitch. I can't spell tonight. Okay. So I've just created a very quick example. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah. Sorry, I was reading Nick's message. Yeah. The important thing with all of this is nothing will happen if you don't place it in the right place. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to reiterate what he's put in the comments. Like, nothing will happen if you get it wrong. There's no right or wrong. You'll just notice that it's not working the way you expected it to, or the way you would like it to, or you would notice maybe that, for example, without going too much off onto too much of a tangent right now, I'll come back to this in just a second. You might find that I don't want the notes or the memos going to my today page. I might want them to go into a vault. So then you change the whole research pattern to save somewhere else. Nothing's going to happen if you decide that note, memo, and meeting summary is working perfectly, but question isn't where I want it to be. Let's just move him to a different space so he behaves differently. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, it's your system. Do what you want. That's the intention here. I'm trying to give you the way to evaluate where you want things to be and how you want it to react and how you want it to work. So coming back to this, we've got new embroidery stitch. I'm going to drag him over to the smart pad. So we'll get a little bit of a demo of what's going on here. And we've now got these guys roughly set. Okay, worked on that one, not the other for some reason. But we've got all of that created now. And what you could technically do at this point is stitch number 433, because I felt like embroidery, or I'm just going to call it a stitch because I can't spell tonight. So stitch, and we want stitch to go into material because he's a material. So that's going to be your output. He's going to be linked to these things. So let me, okay. He's going to be linked to the origin and the focus. Let's make that a bit bigger for everybody. Okay, so what I've done to kind of catch everyone back up to speed again, we've got the smart pad. I've created the embroidery website as the project. I've created the embroidery stitch as the deliverable, which is already in the system because I don't need to create another super tag. That's all logged. I've got a task system which is set up. I can see that in the task system when I go into it, in the task when I go into it, I've got the focus and I've got the origin. Okay. And inside of resources, I've got the stitch that I've created for this project. Okay. So everything is all set up with the objective, the resource, and the action steps that you need to take to achieve everything that needs to happen. So this is again, the question of where, what, why. Like, the reason why you go through those different behaviors is because things also then surface in particular areas throughout the system. So video, email, social post, all of these items and materials, they're all going to show up inside of resources.
One last question on that. If I do a video on that stitch,
Yep.
that would fit in with that, wouldn't it?
Yep, because I could now come in here and go video about stitch. I mean, you can even do this. Stitch 453. Video. So now he's tagged there. He's assigned to all of this. He's assigned to that website. You could put the stitch in there as well for the origin. That didn't automatically happen because we didn't
Write it in the project.
no, there's a yes and no. We did create it in the project, but source linking, the actual stitch is not an origin source. That's why the origin didn't establish it. Okay, because stitch comes from the line of stream materials. So if you wanted to, oh, it should have done actually. Video then should have actually done that. Ah, okay, no, it didn't. So if you wanted, if you wanted to create video inside of here, for example, then you could also drag materials up. And now I've got that automatically assigning to the stitch. So that's because I wanted to use the stitch as an origin source. You only really need to do this if you're like adamantly creating things inside of something else. So like that's why focus, executes, and events, they are set as your main. Oh, I'm going to just clear this guy out. They're your main origin sources because they're the places you're going to be creating things in. That's the main rationale for why this is set up. But if you choose to want to have things automatically tag up and do stuff, then that's kind of the way that one works there as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. Any more questions for any more questions, I guess? Like I can definitely send an email around to or a little blast out with this information for anybody who's interested. Where'd it go? So I can definitely send this out, which is how to evaluate. If anyone wants this in their email, let me know. And
that would be useful.
Yeah, this is kind of like a little bit of a demonstration of the methodology, really. Like it's open for debate. It's my rationale for how I've been setting things up. I did say right at the beginning that what I would do is I'll log out of this one and log into mine so that I can show what an extensive, expanded version of this system might look like. And then I think that's probably coming to a natural end. So I'll just log out of this quickly and log back in somewhere else.
If you can hear any snoring in the background, it's my dog.
Oh, okay. Thought you meant me. I was like,
No, it's not me. It's the dog beside me.
oh, work out where mine was. Okay, so this is my personal system. If I go into the schema and we have a look at the streams, what you effectively have is I have the minimum number of tags that I deem necessary. I should say it that way. I've got the minimum number of tags that I deem necessary for my day-to-day actions. This way, I don't have to read. I don't have to think about too many different types of tags. I just kind of end up getting on with it, and the system does the rest. So in this instance, I've got client projects and digital projects like this template. I've got quests and channels like my, I mean, that should be kind of self-explanatory in the channels, but quests are operating like areas, my business, my dog, my home, etc., etc. Execute, I literally just have action for my actions. And these items are all just different types of objectives. And they've moved around a little bit. Like plant originally was a project, but now it's an objective. I had to reassess what hierarchies were doing what. Subscription and routine and things like that. They're all objectives that happen over a long period of time. They might repeat themselves, they might change, but they're not like a low level action the way that they operate for my system. Events are kind of self-explanatory. They appointments like personal, professional. Don't think we're going to go into too much detail, but gathers where it gets a bit more extensive. So this is where I'm also currently trying to associate now that I've merged my entire system back together again after like trials, and because I basically installed the template on my personal system multiple times. So by this point, I had a whole array of different tags that just needed to be consolidated. So as I was going through everything, this is kind of where I'm at right now, but I'm still working out the behavior on some of these items. So to go through it kind of roughly and quickly, anything that is a workable item that might be linked to a focus or an origin or is something I create effectively comes into materials. Documents, scripts, newsletters, posts, case studies, anything I'm creating or writing or final output. Records become topic, types, anything that is a categorization of something that I want to save. Industries, art movements. I keep hex code colors and fonts that are associated with different brands because I'm a designer. And I've got like personal goals and things like that all set in records because all of them are connection dependent items, or there's something that is a library item that I want to keep. I'm trialing something at the moment where the transactions that is currently in executing the template, I'm trialing it as gather because I realized in my system, I'm creating logs of receipts, I'm creating invoices and things like that. But all these items that when I realized I was going through this and did my own sort of like justification of where they should go, they're not behaving like tasks. They're not behaving like objectives. They're actually a document I'm creating that I need to track in some way, shape, or form, but it doesn't need to operate like a task. So there's a distinction here of how do I want this to operate, and I'm still trying to, coming in a template near, coming soon kind of thing. We'll talk about income and expenses another time because that's part of a bigger expansion pack that I'm hoping we'll be able to do one day. Right now, we haven't got the formula equations in Tana to be able to really push that to its limits. Links and things like that will all go into there. And then we have research and highlights, and I have a whole different category for AI. I don't want to go into too much on that, so I'm just going to bring research up, and I'm going to bring highlights And I'm going to just knock these two down. And we can talk about these guys after. Okay. So I'll finish on. Can I get this guy up? Thank you. There we go. Okay. So I'll finish on just explaining why I put things the way that I put them. And I think that should come to a natural end. So all of those I've kind of described. They're an output. All of these, they're a library. Highlights are different to my notes. So this is something that me and Nick will go into more detail in a future episode, but that's all to do with his gigabrain. So we'll talk about that another time. And the whole research section is all of my collection points. So that's all my capture, all my voice, all of my article sources, anything that I want to tag as a point of contact. This is my source material. So that's where research comes in. And links, again, pretty self-explanatory with the links. Everything operates slightly differently. And I pick, well, to kind of like finalize, I pick where things go based on its behavior, what I want it to do, and how and where I want it to be. I hope that explains things in more detail for everybody.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, okay, yeah. If there's no more questions, I will say good night.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Till next time.
Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye, guys.
Bye bye.